Alright everyone, welcome to another edition of In Between Days, where we discuss the NBC hit soap Days of Our Lives. We are going to be checking in. This is our midweek check-in, so we're covering Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday in this episode, so we gotta jump in fast. Once again, this is Jason, and I've been watching Days since well before I was born. And I continue to do so. We're going to look at some June 2021. Here's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We start things off, obviously, with Monday. Brady and Philip were fighting over who gets to take Chloe home from the hospital. They each showed up with the almost exact same pair of tulips. Brady called Philip's version, the larger version, a little bit too ostentatious. Anyways, they keep bickering, and that's leading to a bit of a love triangle right there, so we'll see how that develops. Kate is also in the hospital, and she's continuing to pretend to be blind to Jake, thanks in part to being able to bribe her doctor. Now, there's a whole storyline going on with her doctor and Gwen and the pill pushing, and if you want to hear more about it and are not up to speed, check out our previous episodes in the archives. And also, I just want to say thank you so much to all my recent subscribers, because you will be the ones keeping the show going, my early adopters as I call you. Thanks so much, each and every one of you, for subscribing to In Between Days. In the meantime, Jake tells Gabby that Kate forgave him under the strange circumstances of their breakup, and when I verbally explain how they broke up, it gets very complicated. So Jake thought that Kate broke up with him, but it was actually Kristen in a Kate mask that magically had all the right tattoos or wrong tattoos removed, as the case may be. Kristen's got a whole bunch of tattoos, and who else was it with all the tattoos? Sarah had a bunch of tattoos, but when Kristen was posing as Sarah, she was able to somehow convince everybody she was this other person, even though they have completely different tattoos. This time, Kristen was posing as Kate. She just went to the local store, got a mask of whatever character she needed and stuck it on and transformed into this other person, and was able to convince everybody of everything she needed to. Yeah, it got a little bit campy, a little bit out of hand. One too many masks for most fans, but that's what happened. Kristen was posing as Kate, broke up with Jake, broke his heart, and Jake went straight into the arms of the woman he really actually seems to love, but has at this point, up until now, been completely denying. He went straight to Gabby, as we all know. And when he finally confesses all of this to poor Kate, who is suffering with amnesia and blindness that's not even real, as the case may be, he feels very guilty, obviously, that all of this has happened, and she's going to milk that. She's going to tell Jake that she forgives him for doing all of that under the circumstances, since he legitimately didn't know. So Jake is under the impression that, yes, Kate has completely forgiven him, so he feels very guilty about wanting to be with Gabby, and is unable to tell Kate any more of the truth, which is the part about he wants to be with Gabby now. He wants to be with Gabby, so a little bit of a strange development there. Kate is trying to work things to her advantage, play a little bit of that chess game. And next we go to EJ and Sammy. Lucas is calling out EJ, with the three of them speaking together in the penthouse that Marlena and John live in, and where Sammy has been staying recently. EJ is there, and Lucas is like, "Where were you, man?" when Sammy was on trial for a murder that she didn't commit. She came to Salem because Allie, her daughter, was in trouble, and Lucas was the one there for her. So there's a big heart-to-heart after that when Lucas leaves. EJ basically, you can debate how sincere he was about this, but EJ basically admitted to Sammy that Lucas was right, and they do have a heart-to-heart. EJ says he's sorry. He says he realizes, he knows how much Sammy has sacrificed for him, staying in Italy and reviving him literally back from death. EJ was shot and blown up, and then he was in the Warehouse of Wonders along with a lot of other characters who were essentially brought back from the dead through strange rewriting of history and backstories and all that good soap opera stuff. So EJ is very much alive in the form of a new actor. I think a lot of fans out there are not giving the actor enough chance. They're just after 1 or 2 episodes deciding, we don't like this EJ, we don't like this actor. I think you should give it a little bit more time. I never necessarily liked the EJ character at all because he was what I consider kind of a fake Demira that never really existed, and then they just wrote him in that way. But if you look into EJ's history, which maybe we'll do in a different separate video, he was originally born in, I think, 1997, don't quote me on that, and then they surapsed him, as you know, that soap opera rapid aging syndrome, so they made him a lot older. They turned him into this character called EJ Wells. His real name is Elvis Demira, but they call him EJ for Elvis Jr., and he came to Salem as EJ Wells. He was a race car driver, and then they quickly rewrote that into him being a lawyer, and things went from there. He got a little bit obsessed with Sammy, and they have a dark history that's not quite as dark today, and we'll just leave it at that because we're getting into a huge sidebar. Lucas and Sammy have an even longer history than that. That goes way back to, I would say, probably at least around the time I'm thinking the Brady Pub formed, which, so you're looking at like 1992. Those two, along with the whole Austin and Carrie shenanigans, go way back. So a lot of people are Team Lumi, and that would be me as well. I want Lucas and Sammy to have kind of a more happy ending, especially with this EJ. I've got nothing against the actor, but we don't need to have Sammy and EJ together, and I am speculating that Sammy doesn't stay around for too long because she's not on the show all the time anymore, as we know. So I think this EJ will be sticking around. I think Lucas will be sticking around, but I don't think that Sammy will. So what that means is we'll probably just be having this new version of EJ, and he probably will either focus on the Demira business stuff or just end up with somebody that is not Sammy. You never know what could happen in Salem, and just because certain people are involved with each other right now, you can never know the future. I mean, he has previous history with Nicole just as much as anyone else, and he's certainly none too happy with Xander right now, so it could all work in ways we can't imagine at this time. Before we get too out into the weeds, we better stick to our little wrap-up, and if we want to do some extra videos this week, we can speculate on some of this stuff. EJ tells, speaking of Xander and EJ tells Sammy that he will be the one that will take care of Xander and his blackmailing, because of course Xander wanted millions of dollars from EJ, or basically anybody, in exchange for Sammy's life as well as Lucas's life. Later in the episode, we've got Sammy and Lucas sharing a goodbye kiss, but Marlena sees that, and we'll get more into that on Tuesday because they have a little bit of a discussion over what's going on with Sammy being married to EJ and kissing Lucas, but we all know that EJ hasn't been around in a really long time, and that for the past several years, Sammy has been away from her family in Italy trying to revive EJ, and finally EJ seems to be able to do everything on his own, and he's back in Salem, and there's some pretty big stuff coming up, and we are going to find all about it as we proceed into talking about Tuesday. A little bit more of that comes up. So on Tuesday we start with Jake, and he admits to Gabby once again that Kate forgave him about all those odd circumstances of their breakup. So again, a little bit of a overlap with Monday, but this time Gabby asks him, how did Kate take it when you told her that you actually want to be with me, and that's the way it's going to be. And Jake tells Gabby, I was not able to do that. While she is blind and has no memory, I've got to support her. I can't put another huge thing on her while she's trying to go through this massive recovery. And so there's a little bit of friction there. Chad, meanwhile, finds Kate in the hospital using a makeup mirror, and her makeup looks pretty good, as in not the kind of job you'd see if somebody was actually blind. Why would somebody who is actually blind be using a makeup mirror? And Chad is able to put all of that together and calls out Kate. She finally does have to admit it, but Chad is willing to admit, or agree rather, that he will not oust Kate. He will not give up that secret, especially since one of the people she's trying to get revenge on basically is Gabby, and Gabby was responsible for a lot of the awful things that happened to his wife Abigail, including the fact that now she's not even in Salem. That's not directly this time Gabby's fault, but it has been in previous times. We cannot get into all of that, but basically Chad, not the biggest Gabby fan, and he's gonna let Kate have her fun for now and get her revenge on Jake and on Gabby as well. So we're gonna wrap things up for Tuesday and then get into Wednesday. So Sammy and Marlena, as I mentioned, they have a chat over EJ and Lucas and exactly where Sammy's feelings lie and what's going on there. We don't really get to any conclusion with that, because I'm not sure that conclusion has developed even in Sammy's mind as of yet, but she certainly has feelings for Lucas and for EJ. Once EJ did come back and sort of offer that sweeping apology to Sammy and basically told her everything she's been waiting to hear for a very long time, whether it was sincere or not, she decides to go back to Italy with EJ, and then eventually we find out, I don't know if I'm getting a little bit too far ahead or if we've already covered this, but EJ has a talk with, here we are, that's right where we are. So Tony talks to EJ and encourages him to take back Demira Enterprises. Tony is not happy that Jake is running Demira. Jake is definitely like a fake Demira who should not be running Demira, and Tony does not want to run Demira full time because he agrees with his wife Anna that he's much more chillax and gets to do all his traveling while somebody else is taking care of things. But Tony is worried that the reason he has Jake running Demira is that the evil Mr. Shin just wants to take over Demira eventually himself. So we've got to get it in the we've got to get somebody that's a blood Demira running things, and Tony feels that should be and could be EJ, and he also tells EJ that when EJ was happiest with Sammy, they were in Salem, and Sammy would be happier around her family. So we don't see it, but it does in fact seem to convince EJ to stick around Salem, because when EJ comes back to Marlena's penthouse and tells Sammy, Sammy had been telling Marlena that they were going back to Italy, but EJ comes in and basically declares, doesn't ask, basically declares that they are going to be staying in Salem. So we'll see how Sammy reacts to all of that. She may like the fact that she gets to be around her family again more, but she may not, at least in theory, but she may not like the fact that EJ made that decision for them, and now she has to deal with being around Lucas and EJ all the time, because as we all know, Salem is a very small town. Xander also continues to blackmail Nicole into hiring him, and Brady kind of walks in on them in a funny situation, but we're just going to have to see if Nicole can successfully convince Brady that it's a good idea to keep Xander around. Xander and Brady both kind of ask, what is Eric going to think about this? But of course, that's the blackmail that Xander has on Nicole. So he and Nicole had a one-night stand, so there's not too much that Nicole can do. she's got to try to just let this hiring take place and have Brady accept it. But what is Eric going to think if and when he comes back to town? Not only is there the big secret, but there's the smaller issue of why would Xander, of all people, be working anywhere near Nicole? So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. In Wednesday's episode, Steve calls Justin and tries to cancel on dinner, and that's because he doesn't want to hang out with Bonnie. Bonnie is his wife, his dead sister's doppelganger. Bonnie looks exactly like Adrian, and who can blame Steve for not wanting to hang out with her after all the malicious things that she did, including dressing up like Adrian and having her spend all that time in jail because of something that Bonnie did and all the rest of it. And now Bonnie, who looks exactly like Adrian when she wants to, is after Justin. She is trying to change her ways, but in a lot of people's views, it's too little too late, and you can't really blame people like Steve and Kayla for thinking that Bonnie is not going to change, and she's certainly not Adrian, and you can completely understand why it would more than bother Steve when you're looking across the table at somebody that looks like your dead sister and who is acting purposely more like your dead sister. But in Bonnie's defense, she said she was doing those things because she didn't think that Steve would accept her if she was herself. So that all gets awkward, and I'm not exactly sure where all that's going, but maybe it was just for the sake of having scenes with Justin and Bonnie, the actress who used to play Adrian as well. And of course Steve and Kayla, so maybe that's just the whole thing there. Maybe we all know the head writer likes a little bit of campiness, maybe more than a little bit of campiness, so maybe that's the only reason right there, is we get a lot of doppelgangers, lookalikes, and long-lost twin siblings. So it is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. I guess we just have to get used to it. Hopefully it'll get a little bit better over the next 2 years. Roman tells Abe to go for it with Paulina when they were talking in the pub, and that's the advice he gives Abe. Just go for it. If your feelings are there, go for it. Paulina and Chanel are having a mother-daughter cooking moment, and Paulina's starting to feel really guilty about her sinister plans, her real plans for the Horton Town Square that we've talked about in past episodes. So if you want to know a little bit more about what's going on with, I was about to say Jackie, but with Paulina and the Horton Town Square, check out our past episodes in the archives. This one's going a little bit long. Belle pulls the plug on Jan in the hospital. Jan is lying there in the hospital, obviously in a coma on a respirator. Belle pulls the plug because this is her third coma in how many years? So she believes that Jan must be faking, and by unplugging the machine, we all thought that she was gonna try to kill Jan, or that she was trying to kill Jan, and I don't think too many people would be that upset after all the torment Jan has put everyone through. But when her husband Sean comes in and plugs the machine back in the nick of time, Sean, or Belle rather, tells Sean she wasn't really trying to kill Jan, she was just so convinced that Jan was faking it. When they leave the room, Jan's finger does indeed twitch a little bit, so, you know, in another 10 years, Jan may show up again, undead or not in a coma, and she may wreak havoc again on the town of Salem. May not take another 10 years, it may be sooner than we think, but hopefully not too soon. And to wrap things up, we've got, let's see, where were we? Yeah, pulling that plug. Sean plugs it back in, that's right, finger twitching. Paulina and her daughter Chanel meet Tripp and Allie at the pub. Paulina approves of Allie, and at first she wants to know what Allie's qualifications are to work at the Sweet Bits Bakery that her daughter plans on opening, but when Allie explains everything, including the fact that she's got the secret recipe to Alice Horton's donuts, Paulina warms up to her and seems to like her. So we'll see how that goes. But later on, in the very ending of the episode, when Paulina overhears with Abe that Allie and Chanel shared a kiss. We're not sure how she's going to react to that. I guess we'll find out. I mean, it's obviously no big deal, but Paulina being Paulina, we'll have to see how she reacts. Usually she reacts to everything with a lot of noise, big reactions to everything, big and small. So she'll probably have a lot to say. And speaking of usually having a lot to say, Julie wasn't around, but at Julie's restaurant, Steve apologized to Bonnie, but later he lays back into Bonnie for trying to act like his dead sister. He's like, this is very uncomfortable. Just be yourself. And Bonnie was like, I really shouldn't have come at all in the first place. You people, Steve and Kayla, that is, never wanted to accept me and never will. And Justin deserves better than I am anyways. So, Bonnie is trying to redeem herself for these people, but she has a long way to go because she's done a lot of bad things in Salem. Not Ben Weston level bad. Not like I was a serial killer, but now I'm redeemed bad. But a lot of things bad in any case. And that is a wrap. Thanks for listening, everyone, to our midweek discussion of Days of Our Lives. I know this one was a little bit long, but there was a lot to talk about, especially since we covered 3 episodes this time. So make sure to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, do whatever you gotta do to stay informed and stay a part of the family with not only Days of Our Lives, but also here on In Between Days. See you next time.